Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Alpine Odyssey, where we get to try to work on our first train station here this episode, and hopefully you guys like the overall, small town feel that it will have. It is based basically off of the Llangollen railway station. I believe it is in Wales in the United Kingdoms. I picked this one because one, I saw a picture with Thomas the Tank Engine in it, and I can't pass up a good childhood memory. And then two, it's also kind of this small town feel to it. You know, I didn't want to have this whole area to be as regal or as massive as, say, like a Union Station from New York. So that's why we are doing something like this. It also has a few unique elements that I think were pretty cool. Well, then again, they might not be unique to train stations per se, but they do have cool kind of track interaction and overall building interaction. And this is just the station part. There's plenty of details left over after this episode that I still need to kind of go back in and add. But we're essentially just kind of gray boxing the shape in and get this kind of a roof line established here. Now I am using the castle brick this episode as our, rough stone and for our rough outline. And that is just because it's the actual material that I want this building to be made out of. This is, of course, a way that you guys can do it as well. And, it's just so I don't forget later on, and it's so I get to see kind of how the repetition of the blocks just look and feel generally. We're also going to be, I spent a lot of time kind of laying out some track, making sure a lot of the track coming up to this point was nice and smooth, transitioned pretty well and split across here, didn't really cause any major issues with clipping. That when two trains are passing each other on the kind of waterfront, just main line themselves, they do clip together a little bit. So I might be addressing that here over the next coming episodes if it bugs me too much. But for now, I think it's in a good enough place where I can actually build the train station. We'll be expanding the wooden supports that you guys seem to like a lot, which I'm really happy. These things do kind of give the whole thing really a whole bunch of character and a big kind of riverside presence that normally wouldn't be there in my builds. So we're just going to be continuing that up the line and making sure it crosses the waterway and keeps that train up above and not falling through. Now the main platforms themselves, they are of course just simple concrete slabs going across the top. I am adding some of these kind of keystone wall elements just on the surface to make it look like they have been replacing tiles over the years, maybe potentially just due to wear and tear, or maybe it was made to look old in the first place and it's actually supposed to just be these little patchwork designs going across the surface. I did get an interesting comment that my park looks really pristine, and that kind of begs the question of how long has Alpine Odyssey been open? And I can basically confirm to you that it hasn't been open a day. And I mean, it might be year 79 in terms of the simulation and things, but until this park is actually 100% done, I'm not going to be considered it as an open, well-established park. So that's why I'm also not going to be going in and wearing things down too much unless it really fits the theme. That's why only some of the buildings in the kind of European section here to start do have some worn patches in there, but it was actually designed to be that way. So, it's an interesting question to kind of consider. How long has the park been open? How many people have been through the area? And how would it actually wear down? And in what areas would it wear down first? That might be things to consider in your guys' parks, just so you have a little bit more of a backstory and interesting story to tell. we are using a little bit of a star logo just going across the surface there. One, to break up the surface a little bit, make sure it's not as plain. You know, the planter kind of sandstone color trim going around it with that red brick, it does look pretty clean. I just wanted that extra little bit for the center there, beyond just the ruined brick. And the ruined brick as well is slightly higher than this logo, so it looks like the logo kind of wore off in areas, and actually looks pretty cool just blending in there. We are now expanding on the wooden bridges. Now these wooden bridges are really wide right here. You know, I thought about keeping them wide, you know, basically just splitting the station in half and making that the uniform size, but I thought it was too bulky, so I spent a little bit of time trimming them down and thinning them out to where they're about the normal size of the rest of the track going leaving the station. And I think that makes it a little bit of a better silhouette. It reads that, you know, these tracks are splitting, and also for having such a wide footprint here and nowhere else, it does look a little weird to have a lot of unused space. You know, maybe if we double track the area, it would look right, but otherwise, I think it is fine like this. So after that, we get to move on to what we're building now. This is going to be the raised kind of pedestrian bridge going across the railway, and it is going to have a nice, simple, clean look to it. I am using the back of the billboards, kind of dyed a color there, just as almost as a art shape. The art shapes that do come with the game themselves, you know, they're not very thin. They're kind of actually thick and bulky. They're about as thick as this piece of wood that we're laying down now. And I wanted something really thin there just to make it look pretty light from afar, and so I figured it would make sense to just use the billboards in this case. To me, that's what the billboards are currently being used as, more so than anything, just art-shaped pieces to fill in walls that you might not otherwise have a piece for. And other than that, I might dabble with them a little bit more later on, but I think this is a decent start, at least for what I see them useful for. We are building one side of this platform, and then of course we'll just copy, rotate it over, and then you get a nice quick duplication. And you know, this is kind of the main time-consuming section of this whole build beyond just the track laying themselves. I cut out 100% of the track laying. It was like an hour and a half. Like, when you guys are excited for me to build a coaster, there's a problem, because I am terrible at coaster builders, and I'm terrible at even just laying out train tracks. So I hope you guys are excited for the coaster, because that's basically gonna be a whole new series starting up. Is how long does it take Uthris to make one coaster in Alpine Odyssey? It's gonna be like 20 episodes probably. But enough of that little rant, I guess. We're just gonna move on, kind of put in some of the roofing here. Now the roofing isn't going to go all the way over to the left side, it's actually going to stop, but the right side, I do want it to go at least down this staircase. I think it'll make it look interesting, and also it will be a bit of a challenge to make. Doing kind of roofs over these slanted areas like this can be pretty difficult. We don't really have a good default roof tile to use in these cases, so you kind of have to wing it yourself. And the best thing to do, of course, is to kind of establish a guideline to follow, and then you are able to kind of make the roof match everything else. By the way, this whole structure is supported by wooden beams, and the wooden beams are going to be in a different kind of style than even the train tracks themselves. They will have, of course, some X cross members going on there, but it will also have some additional elements that you guys will get to see a little bit later in the speed build themselves. So, you know, again, just building one half of this thing, because we can easily, hopefully, copy that over to the other side. You know, the main problem with this is probably just the fact that I don't measure out the distance between a lot of these vertical beams, and that kind of screws me over a little bit, kind of just because I can't really use a whole lot of copy and paste, and that also slows me down, because copy and paste is kind of your best friend in Planet Coaster. but it's something you just kind of deal with. Sometimes, you know, I'm just a little bit stubborn and I'm just like, well, I'm just gonna keep building until it looks right, essentially. We're going to establish the front here, how high that is, and then we can essentially make a connecting line from the top of both peaks, which will give us a nice center line to work off of. It took a decent amount of time, so I'm just gonna go ahead and skip that whole section just because, you know, I think you guys want to see the train station itself get built. Some additional elements such as this little trim going along the upper roof edge looks pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with how this thing turns out, and luckily we can kind of copy and paste this just straight through to the other side. So that's kind of the nice thing about working in a pretty symmetrical building design, is that copy and paste function. Sadly, I just wish I could have used it for the roof. That would have been such a time saver. There was a lot of little renditions and things that I had to go through to make such a simple building, and I didn't think that would be possible, but I almost feel like complicated and overly detailed structures at this point are easier for me, just because you can kind of use their complexity to hide things. In simple and clean buildings, it needs to be very thought out, kind of methodical, and can actually be a little bit slower for me to make, especially tile sets for. So it's one of those things that you don't think it's going to be time consuming or hard until you take a swing at it. And here we are, about halfway through the video, and we've only built one pedestrian pathway over some railroad tracks. But now we get to go and do the actual building itself. It's going to be a pretty straightforward build. We're, of course, just going to make a simple door tile. We are using kind of a darker stone for the back and some lighter wood and also white kind of framing elements that are going to be for the windows and doors and things. And usually that generally works out pretty good. You know, if you have light walls, have dark windows and doors. You have dark walls, have light windows and doors. You know, the contrast is super important in these type of things. So that's what I enjoy the most. Now, we are going to be, of course, making little custom windows. We're going to be going in, making little custom roofs for said custom windows. And of course, I'm going to be, I don't know if I did it yet. It doesn't look like it. That I'll be changing the color of this stone in a moment. Again, the original kind of shape behind this whole section is more of the gray boxing section. So, you know, the color wasn't final. I usually come up with the color after actually looking at the tile set itself, seeing how the textures kind of work together, because a lot of textures kind of color differently, and if you have an idea in your head, it might not work well with the pieces you're building out of. So that's why I kind of worry more about color in the tile creation process, and not so much early on. So here, you know, simply copy and paste a bunch of these pre-made assets. We'll be going back in and eventually adding some handmade kind of custom details here and there just to make it look a little bit more interesting, not so much like a cookie cutter kind of structure. But you know, that's what you also kind of get when you do make these tile sets. You know, things do look pretty uniform. You do lose probably a little bit of character in your build if you're doing this kind of method, but for me it's a worthy trade-off just because of the time savings that you get out of that in general. The roof line's pretty cool. We get a nice kind of rectangle over the main section, and then that gets split, not even down the middle, it's a little bit off center there, and then that roof line gets smaller at the very end there. So it's kind of has a nice little step transition and functions, I think, pretty well there. We're gonna tie the station now to the platform, make everything look like it's grounded and not just floating on the water's edge there, and of course dye the roof to match everything else. Now, we're not using custom tiled roofing anymore. I think the part count 1 was kind of getting a little too crazy, but also it's kind of good to have these basic shingles for such a basic structure. I think if I made and used our other European tile set, it would almost take away from it. Especially since those roof tiles are pretty large, and this is kind of really small and almost meticulous kind of looking. So I think it looks a little bit better there. Here is how the pathway kind of connects to the train station itself. I originally kind of wanted the path to just do a hard stop, but I couldn't get the path to kind of blend together enough to do something like that. So we do have these little gaps here and there, and the path kind of folds in on itself at the end. But I think that's fine. It adds a little bit of character, and I'm fine with some happy accidents in terms of that aesthetic coming through. And we get to, I guess now, finish building our wooden supports on the left part of the pedestrian bridge here. Another reason I didn't carry that roof line all the way over is that I think it would have blocked a lot of the building itself. The actual kind of railway station at Lengelen is going to, I think the pedestrian bridge is roughly in the middle of the building. So it's not really blocking too much of the building at one time. And so its sightline is, I think, inherently better than ours. However, I like the queue and how that works, because the pedestrian path is actually the queue to the roller coaster, and the train queue is actually inside the building. That I like that the people going to the coaster get to see kind of the whole plaza from a little bit of above. They also get to see out into the coaster, and if I put that in the middle of the building, I think it would be a little bit harder to see from there. So I really wanted that closer to the plaza itself. Here is the little bit varied kind of wooden supports. Of course, the thicker beams are the weight kind of carrying beams. These thinner ones are more or less to keep the wood from kind of twisting under its own weight, bowing in any sort of fashion, and turns out pretty good. I also like the fact that, you know, we are breaking up the wooden surface there a little bit, you know, not too much of a difference. Can really make these things look rather separate but still attached to each other. We do add the one tree for our gardening. You know, I don't do much gardening this episode. We're probably going to be doing that a lot during a live stream. And then now, just some simple kind of handrails going up this pedestrian path, and we're pretty much done. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and kick it over to real time. You guys will get to see how everything looks there. And eventually, once everything is kind of completed in this section, we'll hopefully take a ride on the train. So let's go check that out. All right, so here we are taking a look at the local train station here in Alpine Odyssey. We have a train kind of arriving now. This one will leave as soon as it pulls kind of towards this station. So let's go ahead and take a look first kind of at the rails and how they're laid out. We have a nice kind of dual lane segment here going all the way along the river. This is going to be the only segment that really does this, just because it's close to the station. The rest of the line is actually going to be just single one way across the whole lake itself. So this is where everything just kind of comes back together, and it looks pretty smooth all the way across. I do like kind of the natural kind of curved expansion as we get closer and have to split this across the platform here. Here is the train just chilling there. It looks like the station broke down, so it's causing a bit of a delay in it leaving. But I'll go ahead and just pause the game here. This is one of the raised platforms. You can see our little star logo just going all the way down. And this little star also kind of matches our fountain here on the main street. So that's why I kind of chose that. It's a minor detail, but it does kind of tie things together, I think, rather nicely. This is the nice covered pedestrian platform going up and across. The view from here is pretty cool. Not only do you get to see the trains themselves and the tracks, but a lot of the main streets. So as the people come up and across here to go board the coaster, Not only, I guess, do they get to see that as well, they get to see everything else from a little bit of a raised platform, which always looks pretty cool from a first-person perspective. There is plenty of clearance, by the way, to clear this bridge. Don't worry about that. Even on the sides, it's technically good to go as well. The left platform, pretty much a nice copy of the right platform here. We continued the wood up and then just kind of ended it. This is the end of the road itself, and it does kind of split off to enter the actual queue line for this building proper. Now, this is what we're going to be working on the next live stream. I doubt it will be this weekend. I'll be out of town, so sadly it might just be a little while before we get to it. But this is going to be an interior kind of queue access point. Our first little I guess priority pass going through here, which is pretty cool. It's nice and small. I don't really want a really long priority pass queue. In fact, I might make them a very high priority just so that they can get in through here and clear this zone rather quickly. A nice little covered area is along most of the main platform itself. This is where 100% of the boarding is going to be happening. And I probably should add some guardrails and things just to make sure people don't just jump off and things like that. The base structure itself is pretty simple. Nice, clean, broad windows, a nice tall door going here and there. And other than that, chimneys, a good little wooden balcony area. And that is pretty much it for what we covered on camera a lot. Back here, you can see how the track kind of loops around, and we have this rather large dead space area here. So what I want to end up doing is making eventually some sort of cover for some parked trains. I think that would be pretty cool to do. And then we can have that as an additional little cool element that people can be seeing from over here, and of course from the coaster itself. So after this episode, we will be moving on. I think, well, it's kind of up to you guys. We can either continue work on the station itself, or maybe start thinking about the coaster. Yes, we're actually getting there. So thank you guys so much for your patience as we've been working through this massive project from a parking lot all the way to getting our first rides in and into kind of our first coaster stations and things like that. It's turning out really well, and I'm just so happy you guys really enjoy this series. One thing to cover though, not a part this episode, but during the live stream, we did end up finishing this front plaza lot. We did combine these two wings. The queue does go through the building now. It doesn't have any interior elements, but it does have this nice little garden area on one side, and then a covered kind of open area for guests to kind of still see the ride as they make their way through the queue, picnic tables, things like that. It's just everything's coming together, and over the next probably, I don't know how many episodes the coaster itself is going to take to finish, but after the coaster's finished, we'll move on into section number 2. So hope you guys are looking forward to that. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment down below on what you guys think of our little station here, and also do check out my other videos if you want to. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.